Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Andrée Bober, Director of Landmarks, and we are just thrilled to have this spectacular work of art by Jennifer Steinkamp at UT Austin. As you're about to see, Eon is a gorgeous work of art, and I think a little beauty can be a real comfort during challenging times. So I hope we'll all get the opportunity to experience it in person soon. Let me start by telling you a little bit about it. Eon is Landmark's 45th work of public art on campus. It's our first permanent video installation, and it's also our first digital animation in our collection. This commission came about because of the College of Natural Sciences. They have been tremendous supporters who believe in public art, and they wanted a signature piece for their beautifully restored Welch Hall. The leading criterion for this commission was that the work arise from the natural sciences. And Jennifer really couldn't have delivered a more apt or stunning installation. I want to add that we're only able to have this event because of the support of many, many dedicated individuals, as well as the foundations and agencies who support our work. These include the transformational support of the Stillwater Foundation, the Texas Commission on the Arts, and the National Endowment for the Arts, whose grant helped underwrite Jennifer Steinkamp's Eon specifically. There are many, many people to thank, and chief among them is our featured artist, Jennifer Steinkamp. Jennifer, it has been such a pleasure and a real honor just to have worked together these past years and to get to know you. So thank you again for bringing your vision, your creativity, and your inspiration to our community. I'd also like to thank our curatorial contributor, Rudolf Frieling, who authored a lovely and insightful essay about Jennifer and her work, which you can read on our website. We're going to drop a link into the chat so that you can find it. And I'll close by adding one more very special thanks to Paul Goldbart, who is Dean of the College of Natural Sciences and whose leadership made this project possible. Paul's going to introduce Jennifer and Rudolf next. And Paul, thank you. Your team is awesome, and it's been fantastic working together. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Andrée. My team is awesome. You're absolutely right. And thank you to you. And of course, thank you to the Landmarks team. Thank you to everybody for joining us this afternoon, and especially Jennifer Steinkamp and Rudolf Frieling. It is truly a joy and an honor to be celebrating the newest Landmarks installation, Jennifer's spectacular Eon. I had the pleasure of experiencing Eon in reality, not Zoom, just last Sunday in the stunningly renovated Welch Hall, along with my friend and colleague, Fine Arts Dean Doug Dempster, and guided by Bill Haddad from the UT Department of Art and Art History. And I have to tell you, Eon really is, as Andrée said, gorgeous. Well, like pioneering artist Jennifer Steinkamp, we scientists take our inspiration from the natural world. And just a glance at Eon reveals not one, but many natural-looking elements, visions of living organisms and debris, each with its own character of form and motion, elements that suggest life, not because they are simple, but because they appear created by chance, to thrive not because they are in any sense platonically perfect, but because random genetic mutations brought them to a form good enough to survive in their setting. Partners in symbiosis, engaging with one another to flourish, a lesson we can all learn from. And like Steinkamp, we scientists are comfortable with randomness. We find it alluring that a closer look at a seemingly simple, smooth object, the surface of a cup of liquefied helium, say, will reveal the roughness of atoms seething in perpetual disorganized motion, even as the temperature is reduced almost to absolute zero, where quantum uncertainty takes over. Well, I wonder if it will surprise you that what we live out, those of us in the College of Natural Sciences, what we get to create and teach and roll around in our minds every day, are ideas that we feel have great beauty and boldness, ideas born of crises and revolutions in humankind's conceptions of the world, ideas that we see as high watermarks of human inventiveness and human culture. We in the sciences fervently believe that these ideas rightly stand alongside other great human creations, say Shakespeare's sonnets or Bach's concertos. I have in mind some of the treasures of science: the chemical bond, the glue that holds molecules together, the double helix, graceful mechanism of our heredity, evolution by natural selection, Pasteur's germ theory of disease, quantum entanglement, black holes, and the Big Bang. Of course, we do science because it brings new capabilities, but we also do it simply because of the elevation it gives to the human spirit. So, Jennifer, I think you have produced what the College of Natural Sciences team, including my predecessor as Dean, Linda Hickey, and Associate Dean, Dean Appling, were exactly hoping for when they asked for science to be put on display. The confluence of science, art, and community at a main campus thoroughfare is by design. EON will inspire our natural sciences community to be bold as they think about science, but even more than that, everyone passing through the UT campus's largest academic building, Welsh Hall, a hub for science from chemistry to biochemistry to data sciences to biophysics, will be invited to stop and notice and delight, just as we scientists will. Well, for the most part, we humans are bound to our thin shell of life, and yet, through the use of minds and hands, scientists have been able to understand a great deal of the workings of nature's grand tapestry. And if EON is indeed a work in progress, this will reflect the reality of science, also a work in progress, ever under refinement. For these and for many other reasons, I am truly thrilled by the newest Landmarks installation. Thank you, Jennifer. Well, it now gives me great pleasure to introduce Jennifer Steinkamp and Rudolf Frieling. Jennifer is a pioneering artist who creates computer animations for new media installations. She has won numerous awards, exhibited at prominent institutions and biennials worldwide, and her work can be found in public and private collections, including the Los Angeles County Museum of Art and the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston, Texas. She teaches at UCLA's Design Media Arts Department. Rudolf is a leading curator of media art who organizes major exhibitions and has made significant contributions to writing about digital art. His publications include Media Art Action, Media Art Interaction, and Media Art Net. He recently curated Bruce Conner, It's All True with Gary Garrels. He is curator of media arts at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. Thank you both for being here, and over to you, Jennifer and Rudolf. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Paul. I guess it's my job to start our conversation. Remarkable introduction. Thanks, Paul. I'm thrilled also to be here with you. And I have to say, unfortunately, I have not seen the work. I sometimes feel I haven't even come close to seeing the work, because the last time that Jennifer and I met, or the one time that we met, that was February. So months before the work was finished. In some ways, I feel I got a sense for the work. I had to write about something that I was half imagining. It was half based on some video that Jennifer sent me. But in any case, I'm glad we were able to still meet before the world shut down in March. So here we are, and not in Austin, as we all had hoped for. But I wanted to start by saying, first of all, also from my end, it was such a pleasure thinking about your work, seeing your work, at least partially, and seeing this as a sort of culmination of an almost 30-year-long career in digital image making. And I hear the words beauty and spectacular and gorgeous, and those are all true. But I, first of all, really wanted to start by saying by asking you, how do you get started? It's not easy to start a commission. It's almost like giving up part of your autonomy as an artist. In what way do you balance this? It's not a conflict, I want to say, but like possibly two different interests.
First, I'd like to say thank you to everybody for the amazing introductions to Paul and Andrée. Rudolf, it was so nice working with you so far. Let's see, how do I balance? It's over the years, I'll be showing you a slideshow of some of the work over the years. And some of my commissions have been with the sciences, and sometimes I take on science as a theme, depending on the situation. And so when I have a commission, generally, my work has actually been site-specific installation for 30 years. And in that, I always research the place, the history of the place, and the people, or whatever it is, the time maybe that it was prominent. And I let that inspire me and come up with the concept that intrigues me artistically. And so in this case, thinking about all the natural sciences, it kind of brought me back to the beginning of time, and thinking about how, well, I guess apparently there was that Big Bang a few eons ago. I mean, what happened before that? I guess it was just blackness or something. But anyway, so it's so tempting to make a Big Bang, actually. Maybe someday. But I decided to go a couple eons after that, and create sort of a place where life was just beginning on our planet, and thinking about, well, what would that be like, and how did we come to be on this planet as well? So we are actually I guess we're the result of a fusion between single cell microorganisms and bacteria, and they got together and formed cells with nuclei and functionality, and here we are. So this kind of years and years of evolution. And so I like to think that, the thing that I guess that inspires me to think about is that our ancestors are bacteria, and our foremothers are, we're related to everything on this planet. It's kind of incredible. So I don't know. I know that didn't quite answer your question.
Sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. I would say we're not actually looking at bacteria.
No,
we're looking at something that definitely looks like a Jennifer Steinkamp world. That sort of feels familiar within the context of your work, within the aesthetics that you apply. So how do you do this practically? You have a tool set of things and objects that you can repurpose in any way, or how do you build up a world like Eon?
Oh my goodness. Well, it did take quite a long time. I've been working on this a few years. I suppose, yeah, some of the textures and the plants are probably repurposed from other artworks, and maybe a lot of the procedures that I use. But actually, this was the first time I decided to figure out what it's like to make floatiness and underwater. And I created these sort of opposing forces of air bubbles perhaps floating upwards, and debris and objects floating downward. yeah, if I kept working on this, I suppose I would just keep adding things to it. Yeah,
I know that was my question.
Unfinished. Pardon? Oh, that's the next question.
No, I know that was my question back then in February. How do you possibly stop here? You know, you were obsessing about details, and I guess the world got denser and denser, and the layers. You kept adding layers. So, can you walk us through that process of layering this world of Eon?
Sure. Let's see. Really, I'd have to look back at my files to figure out where I started exactly. I think I was experimenting with making objects that feel floating, like they're floating. And I don't know, it's just, you know, you make something and needs something more, you know, and then you play with a few layers. It's probably a lot like a piece that I made called Orbit, which is another seemingly scientific kind of name. It's basically it's more science fiction though. It's a planet that goes through its whole year within a couple minutes. And so it shows you all the seasons. And it doesn't quite look like a planet, but I think of it as a planet. And that piece has lots of layers and this kind of build up. Also the piece I made called Madame Curie, similar kind of, I guess it adds this sort of density and a certain kind of depth without having perspectival markers such as a horizon line. It seems to be how I work. Maybe that gives me the signature, I don't know.
Maybe. I was struck by the fact that your work seems so flat in some ways. You know, it's like a series of layers on top of each other, and there is not quite the sense of where the world ends. It's somewhat infinite, but at the same time, there's this peculiar sense of depth to your work, and that you achieve by adding this background lighting, or as you said a while ago, drawing of yours. Can you speak a little bit about that relationship between the foreground and the background?
Oh, sure. In fact, we had discussed that maybe the work is kind of like a frieze, perhaps, in that it's more 3D graphics, especially animation, allows you to make this sort of dimensional, almost sculptural, although it's not there in physicality, kind of representation. And so the space that I usually kind of create is not extraordinarily deep. It's, no, I don't know how deep it is, but it's perhaps more like a frieze. So I like to think about it as an electronic frieze. And that actually probably popped into my head when I was making a piece for a courthouse in Long Beach. And, you know, courthouses, I mean, you have to have a frieze on your courthouse. So I gave them an electronic frieze, at least that's, you know, what I liked to think of it. And then I think this piece could work that way as well. Yeah.
Jennifer, I believe you have some images that you can share with us of previous works.
Yeah, we could continue talking while I do that as well. Share that. All right, play from start. All right. So I wanted to start with this slide. It's called 6EQUJ5. That's actually after the WOW. It's actually it might be the only transmission from a non-human source in outer space, perhaps. So it was a radio signal that was captured. And so that intrigued me. So I used that as the name. This is a piece of, inspired by Stephen Hawking's television show. I think it's Into the Universe with Stephen Hawking. And in one of the episodes on aliens, he described how life might have come to Earth through a process called panspermia, where organisms from outer space enter our atmosphere and on perhaps in this case, asteroids, and seed the planet with microbes, which then create, what we have. So somehow randomly, Stephen Hawking definitely does not believe there is a God. And so he considers this to be very like a random sequence of events that, line up perfectly to create us here. To me, that point of view it just feels like there's more to life. And so I decided to create asteroids that seed the planet, but they also have graffiti and sort of artwork on them, the sort of messages. So, and this was this piece I'm particularly fond of because it utilizes scientific theory, but then has my artistic intention behind it. And I feel like it's the first piece of mine that really did that. There's earlier works of mine that this was at Caltech in Pasadena. It's actually interactive. Oh, I wanted to say, if you want to watch the videos for the piece, in the chat, you can click on a link and it'll bring up a browser and you can watch the videos. I don't know if that's going to really work, but you can try it. Zoom won't let you play videos, so it was my sort of workaround. You can let me know later if it works and I'll try to use it in the future. But anyway, so this piece is interactive. There's sensors along the top, right below the barrel, and they trigger sort of explosions in the imagery as scientists walk through. And so it was commentary on the funding in the sciences, which are basically heavily weighted from the war machine. And Einstein was opposed to this. He saw it as a huge conflict of interest. So that was that piece. This was my second endeavor into trees. It's called Dervish. I had exhibited in Istanbul and saw a dervish performance and thought that I would make trees that are attempting to whirl like dervishes. This one is Madame Curie. The plant, as I mentioned before, the plants are layered and moving slowly across the wall. It takes about 5 minutes. Some are coming down. So in a way, this is definitely related to Eon, which you'll see. In the museum in San Diego, this was another commission, and I would drive down there, and halfway between San Diego and Los Angeles, where I live, is a nuclear power plant called Onofre, and it's now decommissioned, thank God. It was right on the water, and it's pretty frightening. And so it got me thinking about nuclear power and nuclear weapons, and I was researching that and thinking about it, and I came across Marie Curie, and started reading about her. There's a couple biographies. One was written by one of her daughters, and throughout the biographies, it actually mentions her love of plants. And so I took all the plants mentioned in her daughter's biography. So Marie Curie is an amazing scientist, and perhaps her research led to some pretty awful things, but in addition, though, she discovered 2 elements, radium and polonium, which you can't even see them. It's so amazing. So it's actually a pretty good movie about her now too. It's pretty recent. I recommend it. But there's that.
Jennifer,
yeah.
let me ask a question here. Like we said earlier, you probably don't want to illustrate science in a sort of direct way. You possibly also don't want to just make something beautiful. In what way does that the space, the taking of space, the immersion into that space really change how people interact with your work?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what happens is especially when there's a large space like that, and the walls are filled, and it's funny to be talking in front of this slide, which actually had a similar result, but you experience the work with your body, and you have this understanding through your senses and your tactile senses and your nerves, I mean, everything. And also, I just wanted to say that beauty gives you a sense of what it's like to be alive. I think other things would as well, of course, but to me, it's a very existential kind of, I don't know. It's so important to me. So anyway.
So what are we looking at right now?
Oh, yes, this is botanic. It was condolence flowers for New York. There's every night at midnight, they take over 63 of the screens in Times Square and exhibit artwork. And so I had a month, gosh, now it's 5 years. Is that 5 years ago? Doesn't seem like 5 years ago at all. So I got to take over. And actually, when the piece runs, everything stops, and cars are honking. It's incredible that with all these other screens that they actually notice, but it was really kind of magical. So yeah, if you're in New York at midnight, you should definitely go to Times Square.
So art in that case actually manages to cut through the whole noise of commerce and just the city life. So it's very unprotected in many ways, unprotected in the sense that you're not in a museum, you're not in a gallery, but possibly you're the only one occupying that space. It seems like you like that challenge.
I do. I guess I like to get outside of. I like to think about new situations, different audiences. I'm always intrigued by the challenge of different kinds of architecture, and I love to research all the different possibilities. In fact, it's a good segue to this. This piece was originally made for the USC's Department of STEM Biology and Regenerative Medicine. It was a commission for their lobby, not quite as big, but so it was a very similar process though. I looked at the research, I actually researched stem cells, and that was completely fascinating. It also got me thinking about longevity and telomeres, and why do we die when we die, and what's it going to be like in the future when people will live to be 120 or 150 years old, when they figure out how to extend our lives, and what does that mean culturally? You're not going to have one career for that long, for example, or maybe you would stop being an artist and take on some other career perhaps, but the education would completely shift, I think, and our idea of what a career might be. So
I have not seen this work, but something quite similar in your New York gallery. And what you can't quite see here in this picture is the fact that the fruits, the objects, are quite malleable and soft, and they bulge, and so they get changed, let's say, in unforeseen ways. And this softness and this sort of all-over quality that Eon has is something quite different from, let's say, a history of abstraction and the construction of images, where it's more about the discrete objects that have specific borders and how they relate to each other. The sense of a system or a world that is at play here is very strong in your work. Can you speak a little bit about how you envision those systems, also in dialogue with your software that you use?
Well, there is a lot of sort of chance. The software actually is created to simulate fabric. So these could be even squishier. And I've certainly played with the amount of squishiness. And so you can kind of see the orange is squishing against the screen. This was made for a monitor, a large monitor in their lobby. So I wanted the fruits to feel like they're trapped and bumping up against the monitor. So they're kind of inside of there. So then they never really leave the screen. They're kind of within their boundaries. Also, I was thinking about well, what stem cells might be used for, and I was also thinking about fruits. That fruits are the ovaries, are the female parts of plants, and that's something that seems to get overlooked. I mean, if you look at Fruit of the Loom, it's all men wearing fruit. You know, it's kind of just funny. Fruit costumes to advertise underwear, but the interesting thing about stem cells is a few years back, a Japanese scientist discovered that you can take any kind of stem cell from any, like skin stem cells, and reverse them to be used as the type of stem cells that were maybe being harvested from abortions, etc. So that was revolutionary. And, science can changes culture in such huge ways.
Jennifer, we, believe it or not, we're almost running out of time. We have to get back to Eon now.
All right.
So one last question, maybe if you can pull up an image of Eon.
Sure.
The scale of the work and the idea of the frieze, in what way does that respond to the specifics of Welsh Hall in Austin?
Uh-oh. That wasn't me. Was that me? I don't know what's
Probably
happening.
not. We're being manipulated here.
Wow. Okay. Oh, I see. Interesting. Yeah, I didn't do that at all. That's funny how it's throwing me off. Can you ask that question?
Yeah, sure. This is, as you say, you often work in response to commissions and site-specific commissions. So in what way is this choice of yours to make this large, super large screen that almost acts like a window into an aquarium? How does that relate to the specifics of that site?
Well, we did a site visit a few years ago to kind of look over the space, and it's kind of a combination of how much budget there is and how much wall space, and working with the architects and kind of back and forth. And it seemed that, a lot of times I work with video projection, but that requires a darker room. So this seemed like a great opportunity to work with the LED display, which is, you don't need a dark room. In fact, you can have it out in sunlight, although this display maybe not so much.
Yeah.
So response to the scale of that particular wall. of the site.
It seems to work nicely with those light bulbs suspended from the ceiling. And my job is to sort of wrap it up, and of course that's impossible. But let me say one thing about the drawings. We haven't really talked about them. The flares, the lightning in the background, which I think opens up a whole different narrative if we want to. It's not just about the past, imagining worlds long gone, eons away, but possibly it's also a vision of the future. Again, a moment where humans are not anymore part of the picture, if you will. And those lightnings in the background speak to some potential of events that occur either in the background or outside the realm of this work. And I like that in particular about this work, that it does give you a sense of narrative or development, but just as a potential or an event horizon, if you will. Well, the last time we talked, I also said that we would, or you guys in Austin, you will probably have to have a very, very long relationship with Jennifer now, as you have to take care of the work, as this work may change in the future. So I think this is exciting, and I very much look forward to seeing the work on site in Austin whenever that might be possible in the near future. Over to you, whoever is next.
Great, so we'll actually keep Rudolf and Jennifer on the screen as we move into our audience questions. The first question that I have from the audience is, Jennifer, you clearly use various simple perspectival techniques, IG occultation, in creating a third dimension in your picture space, but you confine yourself to a very shallow field of vision when the possibilities available with conventional pictorial perspective, never mind animation, are gigantic. Why?
I think it comes, it's probably a response to working with large scale, with walls and things, from filling up spaces and trying to create a sense of another space, like so I'll take architecture, project, and I want to sort of transform that architecture and give you the sort of in-between space, in between the space you're in and this imagery. So if I add a horizon line, that limits the perspective. It sets it on a camera, and that's looking specifically at the scene. So I believe it has something to do with that. Yeah, and it's also intriguing to me to kind of mess with perspective in this way. I'll use speed and distance and value to create a sense of depth. It could be something to do with the resolution as well of the kinds of materials I use. So to have something extremely far away, you really lose a lot of detail. So it's perhaps related to that, but I think it's on creating this interaction. It's a nice question, thank you.
The next question is, none of your creatures seem to interact in this space. They're all strangely insulated from one another. There's no predators or prey, no social organization. Why?
Oh my goodness. It's actually going to be a similar answer to the previous. I wanted to create this continuous sense of time so that you don't feel a narrative as much. I mean, of course, you'll see the same things over and over, but it's not quite as obvious. So if I had story elements like that, something being eaten and dying, let's say, or whatever, that creates a beginning, middle, and end. And I guess one of the parameters I work with is creating this endless loop or this continuation. So hopefully, it feels strange answering and not having a conversation.
Rudolf, feel free to jump in also.
Yeah, I actually really like this question. I think that was sort of what I was trying to allude to by pointing out that there is the background, there is a beyond, which is indicated by this lightning and the flares, or what Jennifer calls her drawings. And while there is no development, strictly speaking, although constantly everything is in flux, so there is no narrative, there's an indication that this might be disrupted at some point, or that this might change at some point. And this could either be a sense of the future, or it could be a sense of the past. So I think those are two equally valid interpretive options.
Mm-hmm. No, I really like what you brought to the piece, that it could be an eon into the future. Because I hadn't thought about that, but now you've made that part of the piece, which is great.
Okay, turning on my video so y'all can see me. The next question is the work generative or fixed organisms?
There's about 70,000 frames, and they're layered, and they're all rendered ahead of time. So yeah, it's not generative. I mean, the process could be considered generative, but it is definitely rendered out. So it's not playing like a video game in real time. But the way things are created with physics, it's kind of a random, like I'll create a something, a creature, whatever, and give it a certain amount of weight and maybe some kind of force like wind or definitely gravity. And so they're responding to these things. So in that way, it is generative.
The next question, I'd like to hear a bit more about the process of creating the work. It starts with the research of the site and the inspiration follows. What about the next steps?
Well, hundreds, days and days of rendering and testing and kind of arranging all the elements in time and layers, and it's kind of this giant puzzle of I sort of try it, I render it out, and you can imagine it's a rather huge rendering, and watch, I've watched this so many times and sort of decide, well, does that work? There's a lot of random accidents, which, are so wonderful. I mean, that's, it's kind of what I live for is, oh, that's it, It's sort of an intuitive kind of knowing, that something is the right thing. I love intuition.
I think this next question is actually a really great follow-up to what you just said. I understand the time of creating individual works varies, but what's the average time of working on a project?
Well, this was a few years. Perhaps there was maybe from, there's periods where there's a lot more of like just intense work. That would be the past 3 months, probably, just crazy intense. The beginning of COVID, it was a little difficult to work on anything, frankly. Thank goodness we got past that. It depends on if I were to make another variation of a piece like this, it would go a lot faster. One would hope. Yeah. It maybe took around 70 iterations more or less, although I don't keep all the iterations, but yeah, so that it's pretty, yeah. I guess larger scale pieces take a lot more work, you know, as you can imagine. I always sort of forget that. But
maybe to add to this, it's probably important to know that you don't really work off drawings or other media. You really start from scratch within the computer.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. Yeah, just sort of run tests and kind of create things, and I was, you know, looking at fossil records and oh no, basket. What's that? Oh, what's the creature called? This little creature basket. Oh darn it. Well, it looks like my creatures. Sorry, I'm having a senior moment, I guess. It's very stressful these days. Yeah, well, anyway, so yeah, it's a no drawing. No. I do keep kind of files of research and references, and it's kind of funny to look back on them. It's sort of to kind of remember what I went through.
You briefly touched on this next question in your response to the last one, and I think both you and Rudolf talked a bit about this on Tuesday, but this person is curious to know if or how the pandemic has impacted your work.
Oh gosh. I did create a piece at the beginning of the pandemic where I made a 3D model of everything in my house, and I made it interactive. It's actually, you can actually see it on the internet, but I don't have any specific links to it. You can try it, I guess, if you go to my website and then /home, HOME, then you can try it. You can kind of see what my house is like. So I did that to pass the time and just keep sort of occupied, but it's not really finished. So, and it probably doesn't really function. And well, there's some glitches, which maybe are good. So how has the pandemic? People seem to think the work offers you like a peacefulness or something, but I don't know. That's a really hard question to answer. Maybe we're not through it yet. My students have done incredible works in relation to the pandemic. Maybe that's what I'm, you know. I keep making my work. I don't know. A lot of my work has started before the pandemic, except for the last piece I mentioned. So I guess we'll have to see.
What are the other pieces that you're working on now, if you can share?
Oh, sure. One's for a porte cochere at a casino in Philadelphia. So you drive under it. It's 100 feet long by 25 feet wide. It's a giant ceiling made out of LED material. It'll be flowers falling from the sky, and some of them get gigantic. So I'm sort of almost done with that. And they're cut flowers. So maybe flowers that would be given as gifts, I suppose.
You're still attracted by scale.
Yes, and motion, and yeah. Yeah, I wish I could see both of these pieces. I don't know. That's the thing I'm missing with this piece, is actually getting to experience the scale of it. I can kind of project parts of it here at my house, but you know, I can get sort of a feel for the speed and the size, but it's just not the same thing. It's not, I don't have a giant LED display in my house.
Another question was asking how this work might evolve, and you had mentioned on Tuesday that there might be some ways that it will change when you do see it in person.
Mm-hmm. Well, we don't know if I'll change it. If anything, I might change the colors, especially the background color, and that would probably be a pretty subtle kind of change. But, well, you never know, I guess. You think I'm going to see it in person?
Here's to hoping.
Oh, God, I know. When are we going to get out of this? Feels like a couple years, I'm afraid.
Maybe a question from my end that's a little bit related. If you actually stand in front of the piece, in front of that screen, do you have a certain expectation in terms of resolution, like how fine grain this needs to be?
Well, I've been working with all kinds of resolutions for the past 30 years, and it could be finer, certainly, that the moment you increase the resolution, the budget doubles. So that's one of those tricky questions. And the funny thing that happens when I get more resolution, like when in the future coming, like tomorrow, we're all going to have 8K display, screen, our TVs will be 8K. The amount of detail will just be insane. So every time we increase the resolution, I get to have, or I seem to add more detail. So maybe I'll add depth to answer that question from a while ago, but we'll see. Yeah.
We really look forward to hosting you here in Austin, hopefully sooner rather than later. Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah, I love Austin. Yeah.
Conversation. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We'll review any unanswered questions and follow up with answers via the website, but I think we actually got to all the questions. If you have more, reach out to us. Eon can be visited at Welch Hall. Information about the location and visiting hours is posted in the chat. And please feel free to watch our acknowledgement slides in case you missed them before. Thank you everyone and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Home soon.